Broads Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. Before we dive into the show today, I do want to thank everybody for the kind messages all over the place. Instagram, Twitter, you guys are the best. And if you're unfamiliar with what happened, I was let go by Beasley Media at 97.5 The Fanatic. They were making pay cuts, and unfortunately, my name was selected. So there's still some big things to come. We're not stopping here on Broads Media. There's a lot in the works, and I'm pumped for it, damn it. So let's talk about the 76ers, shall we? I'm convinced I want to bring James Harden back, and I want him to stay. I know he did opt into the contract, so he is technically here. But I want to run this damn thing back with him and Joel Embiid, with the difference being, can you tap into Tyrese Maxey differently and the addition of Nick Nurse? I want to know if that's enough of a difference. Game 6, couple minutes to go. How pathetic was it? Too damn pathetic, if we're being honest. But is it different if Nick Nurse actually applies something to the game instead of Doc Rivers just watching James Harden keep the ball and not get the basketball to your best player, Joel Embiid, just kept it and completely fell apart? Can you get an added layer to Tyrese Maxey by asking him to do more, by seeing the floor differently and giving him a different role, by default being more of a passer, getting others engaged more instead of tunnel vision to the basket? I don't know the answer to these questions, unfortunately, but I'm willing to find out, and that's the difference. I don't want to make this team worse by grabbing a bunch of nice pieces. I don't want to go to the Clippers and land Powell. Maybe a few weeks back I was more willing, but that's not the case anymore. If you strike out, fine, but at least I can strike out knowing that I admire and I understand the logic of entering this season. I'm not saying it's a sexy sell. Quite frankly, I don't think it is. I don't know if the fan base is going to be on full board because we watch this unit go through a fantastic stretch and be arguably one of the best teams in all of basketball after a 500 start, going 12-12. And no one was, let's say, all in. Last year, there was a guard up. There were haters. There were non-believers. And unfortunately, they were proven right. So if you bring majority of that team back and add Pat Beverly, now Paul Reed is officially back, and we'll get more into that. Can it be Nick Nurse? Can Nick Nurse be your selling point? In a league where it's player heavy, in a league where it's all about your superstars, can you sell a fan base? Our biggest addition is Nick Nurse, a head coach. Maybe. There seems to be a lot more NBA fans out there that believe in the power more than I do, even though I'm stressing I think there is a difference. But I guess my view on it more is I believe in Joel more than most. I believe in, believe it or not, Harden more than most. Not that he's the best player in the entire universe, but I think you can work with it as someone who led the league in assists last year. Someone who is capable of dropping 40. What we need to do is somehow remove the 12-point game and the 2 of 17 game and some of the terrible, horrible, gross, pathetic, terrible, disgusting, absolutely vomit-worthy, horrible games in between those. But that's when a Tyrese Maxey needs to shine. That's when he needs to be more willing, and he being James Harden, to play off the ball to allow others to get into a groove and to get in their bag, even if it's Tobias Harris. I would like for Tobias Harris to do more than just stand in the corner. For as much crap as we gave him and his father for those outrageous statements that were made not too long ago, there is truth within Tobias and what he claimed he is. He is a big body. He can defend the other team's best opponents. He does have some versatility. There are strengths. He just portrayed himself as the best to ever do it in those areas. That's not the case. There's something nice to work with, and it comes down to, can Nick Nurse apply it? So for me, it's less about, all right, it's Nick Nurse. And it's more about, I have belief that there's something to tap into with these players on your roster that others might not. I don't know if we could ever win with Joel. He's not a closer. He's never healthy. We can't win with James Harden. That's more of the approach by the ones that are outraged. I think there's stuff to tweak. You could call me naive. It's more about, if you don't, where do you go from here? That's also added to this. So maybe that means I'm taking a dig at some of the ones I just gave praise to. And maybe that is, I am knocking a step of Joel Embiid, and I am taking shots at Tyrese Maxey. Because it's more about, well, where do you go from here if you do trade James? And you do bring in Powell, and you bring in Mann, and you bring in a collective group of guys. I don't know if the ceiling is high enough. It might not be with Harden. It might not be with Embiid. You might see another upsetting postseason run. But I need to ask, if I'm going to look at the roster, what is the potential of the ceiling? And while there might be all sorts of confusion and all sorts of uncomfortable feelings throughout the journey of getting to your ceiling, and it might be inconsistent, you can only win an NBA championship with a team that's capable of reaching a certain top. A bunch of guys, if Harden's out of here, has a lower ceiling than with him here. As bad as that might sound to you. You need internal growth. Paul Reed has to take another step, and I like what the Sixers did. What this means down the road, what this means for the future, what this means for possible additions in free agency in other years, Utah puts you in a bind. But I think there's a lot of value in what Paul Reed provides, and I think that there's a lot that Nick Nurse can do here. I like the idea of switching around your 4 and 5. Can Paul Reed go to the 4? Mo Bamba, he does have the ability to knock down some threes. All right, I'm not telling you he's a world beater. I'm asking for 10 minutes of regular season action. So remember to keep that within range when we're discussing. Last year, not the greatest from behind the arc, shooting 31%. But the year before, he shot 39%, almost 40. The year before that in 2022, that was a split. That was a split. He shot 31% when he went to the Lakers. He shot almost 40% in Orlando. This was the same season. Total combined, it was 38.7% last season. There's spacing involved here. 2.5 3-point attempts per year. In 2021-22, 4 threes per game at a 38% clip. I think that there's something, and he averaged double digits at 25 minutes a night. He won't see 25 minutes per night. I don't know why they brought back Montrezl Harrell, unless he's just a DNP, because there are DNPs in this league. There's guys who never touch the floor. There's Furkan Korkmazes. If he's that, I don't know, maybe they were all in a bind, and they didn't know if Paul Reed would be matched, so they brought him in as a safety option, and then eventually realized that we're going to have Paul Reed here. I don't know, maybe it has something to do with the load management. Nick Nurse wants to approach this differently, and with Joel Embiid, he's always banged up. How do we get him not to be banged up? How do we get him to be healthy? How can we get the best version of Joel Embiid possible after Game 82? So we're looking at Game 7s, and we're in 7-game series. He's strong, and both of his legs are upright, and there's no torn meniscus. Maybe that means they need a couple of bigs on their bench to make it through the 82-game regular season. I don't know if I expect much of Montrezl Harrell. He was a disaster last year. I love the upside of Paul Reed. I think that he's trending in the right direction, and he could spark the club. It's legitimate. There's something to it. I'm just trying to cover all bases here and wondering why. What could they be seeing? How could they be looking at this internally when studying their roster? Daryl Morey did the right thing, though. And I like the addition of Pat Beverly, a guard who can run the floor, run the offense. Scrappy, too. Hey, maybe it's time for P.J. Tucker to hit the bench. And they do something different. They do something creative. They change a big part of the DNA. He cannot bury threes enough. He is left wide open. Teams disrespect him, which makes it harder for others to get their game going. It starts to clutter up the paint. It starts to clutter up other areas where Joel Embiid likes to operate, from the free throw line and from the nail. All I'm saying is, if you're asking me, if you want to take another crack at this, and you want to ask the Sixers to put the best team together to do it, based off of their current situation and their current build, James Harden is on that roster in my eyes. And I think that there's a lot to work with here. And I think that Nick Nurse is going to pull some strings out of his ass that maybe we don't anticipate. And when we're trying to look at the possibilities, we're leaving something out because he's more creative than we are. And there's a whole nother life to this. And by the way, let's not leave Joel Embiid's growth out of this. Every year we wonder if this is it. Every year we wonder if there's no ability to improve. And then we are proved wrong. So what can Nick Nurse do to help Tobias Harris out, to help Tyrese Maxey blossom, to get Joel Embiid? It might not be points per game. Maybe the whole points per game thing goes down, but there's efficiency in other areas. Nick Nurse has put together a phenomenal game plan on how to cause a ton of stress for Embiid whenever he gets the ball. As soon as the ball touches his hands, here's 3 guys, here's 2 guys, baseline, from the free throw line, different angles. He's been a big, huge part of the other side. That's knowledge. Knowledge is power. So, take Doc, take the free throw line, take the nail. Maybe it's less points per game, but the knowledge of defense, the knowledge of double teaming, it gives Joel some added space to get better as a passer, to turn the ball over less, to find open lanes. He's not as bad as he once was. He's not even bad at it anymore. He used to be non-existent in that area. You beat the Brooklyn Nets, who suck, by the way, in the playoffs by everyone else contributing. Everyone but Joel Embiid can get off shots. That's what the Brooklyn Nets wanted to do, and it failed miserably because Embiid was able to control it. Now, as you get deeper into the playoffs, there's better talent on the other team. There's better head coaches on the sidelines. There's more length. There's more talent. And it gets that much more harder, even if it's the same exact philosophy or a similar philosophy. Maybe less aggressive because they feel more comfortable and more confident throwing one-on-one matchups, or it's just 2 defenders, or it's shading help instead of just full throttle, 3 defenders, and here they are. You're just inching your way closer to Embiid so he can feel the breath. He can smell the breath. But you're not completely collapsing his way unless it's someone who can't do anything hanging around the perimeter. P.J. Tucker makes a lot of money. That's a big ask for a veteran, someone who I'm sure was promised a lot when he signed the contract here, and it was a big deal. It's a lot of money. But I like what Pat Beverly said about wanting Joel Embiid, wanting James Harden to be here, because he's absolutely right. So I'll read you some of the quotes. Pat Beverly on what he can teach Maxey on defense. I'll go to the James Harden one first. Players are here to play. That decision is definitely above my pay grade. but you can't redo a James Harden. So hell yeah, you want him here. Hell yeah, you want him in the locker room. Hell yeah, you want him at the first day of practice. One of my decisions coming here was because James Harden was here. So I hope he stays. Hope that everybody can kind of work something out and put that behind us and kind of move forward. I think it's important. Let's package that up with what Rachel Nichols had with Joel Embiid a couple of days ago. He was asked about James Harden and the current spot of the team. Let's take a listen.
How did you feel when James told you or someone told you that he wanted to be out of Philadelphia?
Disappointed, but then again, I also understand, it's business. People make decisions, and and I'm more appreciative of the way he's handled the whole situation. We're gonna be boys forever. Want him to come back, obviously, so we can go out and accomplish what we want, which is to win a championship. So hopefully that his mindset can be changed. But other than that, I'm just so happy to be. It's fun. We close and we've grown since he got here, and that's what I'm excited about. And I'm excited to keep that friendship for the rest of our lives.
I love his answer. I don't think there's any problem with it. I don't want to hear the debate that that's not a leader. He said he's still friends with him, and, he's disappointed. There should have been a different viewpoint from him. No, what do you want him to say? You got to remember that this NBA, okay, it's a community. It's a brotherhood. And if James Harden, from a business standpoint, expresses his feelings, and Joel Embiid says, what do you want me to do? I mean, there's guys who want their bag, there's guys who want this, there's guys who want that. Who am I to judge on the way you're handling your profession? Now, we would love, in theory, for everyone to be about winning a championship. That's it. The money is secondary. The place you're living is secondary. Family secondary. Party secondary. It's not how it goes. There's a ton of humans, and these humans have different scales on what's most important to them. And when you've been in the league as long as you have, there's a ton of different personalities, some not having the greatest skill set in basketball in the world, and others being one of a premier talent. James Harden happens to fall in that category, and I think Joel Embiid handled this publicly the best way he possibly could. He's disappointed, but they're boys. What do you want him to do? There's nothing he can do. He can't sit there and scream and call him out, because if he truly wants him back, I don't think that that's going to get on James' good side. So you just handle it like a professional and you keep moving, and if you can convince him and have Daryl Morey have his input in it too, let's just see where this goes. But I don't see there being any sort of positives or any sort of value if he just ripped James Harden right here. So I don't get it. I don't know what he wants. What more can he ask for? I'm an MVP. I'm one of the best in the league. I'm the best center. We have a fucking awesome two-man game. We're bringing in Nick Nurse, who has won a championship. Let's go. I mean, that's just being too noisy. I think that's somewhat inevitable. I think that's somewhat obvious. I don't think James Harden needs to hear from Embiid talking to Rachel Nichols that Joel Embiid feels that strongly about it. I'm sure that that's already been discussed. That's already been talked about. Those two have already sat down and sort of hashed out everything that they possibly could. I don't think they have to hash out anything. That normally signifies that there's something wrong and there's something to talk through. I don't think that's the case, but yeah, Joel wants him back, and that's okay. And I think he took a shot at Ben Simmons there, talking about the way James has gone through this process. I'm going to try and find it. I don't know exactly where it's at. He said disappointed. Then again, it's the business. I'm more appreciative of the way he's handled the whole situation. Ben handled it like a bitch, right? Ben handled it like an absolute crybaby. I don't want to hear about gym videos, but that's what the Brooklyn Nets are doing. There are Brooklyn Nets people and Brooklyn Nets media talking about Ben and how great he is, what great shape he's in, how he's ready to take the floor. The guy's a bum. The guy is an absolute loser. The guy is a clown. And Joel definitely took a shot at it. As he should. Because he had to carry that dead weight on his shoulders forever. Which brings up another excellent point here. How much turnover has there been? Is turnover good? Is turnover needed? Brett Brown, J.J. Redick, Tobias Harris, Robert Covington, Dario Saric, Ersan Ilyasova, Marco Bellinelli, that whole crew. You make a move, you get Jimmy Butler, you sign Tobias, you bring in Doc, you bring in James Harden, Ben Simmons leaves. Now, that was right. I'm just giving you a whole bunch of new people. Where is the continuity? Where is the ability to grow and be together for years and years and years to get this thing rolling? You know, like James Harden and Joel Embiid's basketball relationship is still very raw. You had a second half push after an NBA trade deadline. You have one full year where one guy led the league in scoring, had an MVP season, and the other led the league in assists. And what can we do to carry this momentum over? People use Boston as the example. Boston's not satisfied and they get farther than the Sixers. Well, who's to say they're right? I don't know if trading Marcus Smart was right. I don't know if bringing in Kristaps Porzingis is right. I don't know if their head coach in Joe Mazzulla is right. Now, that was different because Ime Udoka is cheating on Nia Long. You want to talk about clown moves. You want to talk about losing brain cells. You want to talk about being a fool. Just constantly look at how the hell you screw that up. Nia Long is, come on now, man. Like, what are you doing? So, from an organizational move having to get rid of a head coach who was very good at his job and seemed to connect with his guys. Brad Stevens didn't. Brad Stevens went to the NBA, realized how tough it is to work with the Jason Tatum, to work with the Jaylen Brown, to work with personalities who view themselves bigger and better than anyone who's ever dribbled a basketball. They started to have big-time internal fires. Ime Udoka got that rolling. Joe Mazzulla, not so much. They went to the NBA Finals. They lost in the NBA Finals. They went backwards. Not easy to consistently continue to get that far. Just because Boston, though, and you use them as the example, who are ran better than the Sixers. As much as I'm not anti-Joshua Harris, as much as I don't destroy our ownership wanting to build a beautiful facility in the city and buying an NFL franchise while owning the New Jersey Devils too and having a lot of impact and a lot of hands and a lot of stakes when it comes to professional sports, the Celtics, they're more of a juggernaut than we are. And sure, they haven't won a championship since Paul Pierce, since Rajon Rondo. and how about this Doc Rivers, Kevin Garnett? It's been a long time. Their sustained excellence and their ability to always be in the mix and always be a legitimate combo team, it runs smoother than the Sixers. So if that's your selling point, fine. I'm just saying, I don't know if I can totally give you a free pass because Boston does something that I have to agree that the Sixers do the same. I like the idea of keeping a unit together and keep poking at it until you break the wall down. There will be a time where I put my hands up, and we are getting closer than ever before. Every season, we are one step closer to that. But I know in this league, to win a title, it starts with a talent like Joel. Whether it's Jokic, whether it's Steph, whether it's LeBron, and if you want to put LeBron, KD, Steph in their own little category, their own little world, on their own planet, and say others aren't there, and Jokic is in there too, and Embiid's just not. Okay, fine. But, I mean, every franchise would want a Joel Embiid. It starts there. Without that, you can completely take away any sort of potential chance to get to the Eastern Conference Final and to eventually win an NBA title. So I want to milk every ounce out of this. I'm thinking of a cow, like you're milking the cow. You're squeezing the juice. You're squeezing the lemons. You're just making sure that this Joel Embiid Sixers run, you don't say, we left a lot of meat on the bone. We left a lot on the table. I won't allow that. I'd rather the opposite. I could put my head down at night and sleep on my pillow knowing that if this does fail, I gave it every single second it deserved. And if you say, well, you're diminishing your assets because the longer you wait, it's not going to be as high, the return down the road. I'll live with it. I will live with it. This league runs off talent as good as Embiid, and I know you don't win when you sell that type of piece. Let me know how many times you get rid of that guy and what you get in return is luxurious, if that's even the word. I've seen the Charles Barkley trade go down. Do you want to revisit that? Just it doesn't pan out that way majority of the time. The small portions and the small percentage you may think of, the risk not worth the reward. I do believe the risk of running this thing back is worth the reward. And if the risk fails, I don't think it crumbles you as much as you may think it is if you are a hater of this plan. So that's kind of where I'm at. Now, Patrick Beverley says this on Tyrese Maxey. Pat Bev on what he can teach Maxey on defense. You get a young player and he becomes so good at one thing that you want them to be great at other things. Like, nah, fuck that. Continue being good at what you're good at, putting the ball in the hole. All right. I think that he took tremendous strides on the defensive side of the floor in the playoffs last year and just in general from the perimeter. I hope it doesn't stop from there. I hope he just keeps his motor going. And Nick Nurse will apply that mentality to everybody, right? I mean, does that quote make it seem like Pat Bev saying, screw it, he doesn't have to defend whatsoever? I'll repeat it. You get a young player and he becomes good at one thing, you want them to be great at other things. Nah, fuck that. Continue being good at what you're good at, putting the ball in the hole. I get his side of it. It's like, this is where you excel. This is what's going to benefit this team, playing this way. And if James Harden is your point guard and they can hash it all out, and Pat Bev is running the second unit, maybe Maxey could be the off-the-ball, go-getter, scorer, bucket getter. We don't need to ask him to average 7 assists. We don't need him to be a 6-assist guy. Maybe that's true. And maybe that's sort of what Pat Beverley wants him to do. Focus on your strengths. With that said, Nick Nurse, he's got a way about his defense. He's got a way about his intensity, which is exciting for him. I want to see Springer. And talk about some of these G League guys. I don't know what they're going to be. Smith and Council. Eyebrows are raised, no? Their names written down because whatever, I don't know. Maybe you get so lucky that someone becomes something that you don't really anticipate. But I can't wait to see what some of these role pieces become. Mo Bamba under Nick Nurse. Paul Reed under Nick Nurse. DeAnthony Melton under Nick Nurse. Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. And the Sixers did the right thing by matching it. I'm not giving up. I know I'm sort of on an island. I get that I'm living off to the side by myself. But all I can do is tell you how I feel. I threw a lot your way there. And, I just have a belief that it's possible. Whether you like it or not, well, that's what I'm excited to kind of figure out down below in the comments. We're going to wrap things up here. I love you guys so much. Appreciate all the kind words. Seriously, if you're new here, because there are people flocking over here from Twitter to my YouTube channel because I tweeted it out. Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Type in Sports Talk with Broads. You'll find me there. Leave a 5-star rating and a review. It goes such a long way. Make sure you're hitting the subscribe button and hitting the bell button, whatever it is, so you can get the notifications whenever we upload. You know, that whole YouTube spiel. Thank you guys. You're the greatest, and we'll be talking very soon.